Hello, everyone. I'm Matt Williamson. How's it going today? Everything's good on this end. Slow weekend. I'm recording this on Sunday night. No quarterback news. Nothing really shaking. That's not unusual for the league to kind of take a step back after a furious week and all. But it would be nice to get some answers or a better direction on what's going on with the Steelers quarterback situation. One thing that did happen with the Steelers since we last chatted was they brought back Ben Skowronek. That's a move I'm very fond of. Going into free agency, I said the three guys that I would really like to retain at what I thought would be very modest prices are Skowronek, Landon Roberts, and Herbig. 2 of 3 left. We broke down the Roberts situation versus Harrison last week. Check that out if you missed it. It makes a lot of sense to me. I don't love that Herbig left. I would have liked to kept him as my interior O-line, backup gurus, whatever. But I am a Skowronek fan. I think that he's an acceptable offensive player. And that's a compliment. I mean, he's a really good blocker, but I think he brings more than that. I mean, I don't think he's just out there to block. He can do some things on the offense, but he's a core special teamer, and that's absolutely huge. I like his style of play, so I think he's an easy guy to bring back. I thought the other two were as well, but the Roberts things make sense to me. The Herbig one, I don't love. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for betting on all the madness. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, BetOnline is your ultimate game day companion. With the largest selection of odds on everything from college basketball to a $200,000 bracket contest, BetOnline continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every Cinderella story to every hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. So, what I am going to do now in the second half of this podcast is flat out steal from Matt Harmon, who Matt joined us at the Combine when I was there with the Steelers. He sat down with the segment. He is a wide receiver expert. He works for Yahoo Sports, and I think he's the guru, frankly, of wide receivers out there. And he has a site, receptionperception.com, that's a pay site, but I do highly recommend it, where he does some real in-depth wide receiver profiles. There's other stuff there, but that's the main gist of it. And I wanted to talk about his profile of DK Metcalf. So, first of all, one thing he does with every player, every receiver, is the success rate and what percentile they are of the wide receivers he's broken down versus man, zone, and press. And I think that's a great place to start. Now, why I say only the ones he's broken down, well, first of all, he hasn't done the others, but he's not going to break down Van Jefferson and the fifth receiver on the Bears. So these are amongst quality players. I mean, I think Matt breaks down I would guess 75 receivers per year, as well as all the draft prospects. That's a different story. So versus man, he was targeted on 41% of his routes, DK Metcalf. His success rate there was 69%, which is 54th percentile. Okay? Amongst good receivers. It's kind of middle of the road against man. Against zone, he was targeted about 59% of his routes, with a success rate of about 71%. That's in the 10th percentile. So really good. And then against press, he only that was a little under 20% of his routes, 75% success rate. That's in the 76th percentile. Now, I know this is kind of cut and pasty, but I'm just going to kind of read what Matt had to say about his breakdown of Metcalf. And I urge you to remember that this is going to be pretty critical because, I mean, he really digs into the negatives. And if I'd read Jamar Chase's, you'd say, that's not quite as good as I thought. Or Justin Jefferson's, or, so here's what he had to say. Metcalf has long been one of the top pure X receivers in the league. And his deployment last year was no different. He's almost everything about Metcalf's game projects best to a X receiver role. And I expect him to do that in Arthur Smith's offense with the Steelers, which is the Pickens role. I mean, that's on the line of scrimmage. That's the big boy routes. I mean, that is usually often dealing with press, those type of things. I've largely been above consensus on his ability to separate. Especially when he turned in a 74 and 76 success rate versus man coverage in his first 2 seasons. But all that being said, his play last year was pretty uninspiring, and his results in reception perception reflect what was an overall mid-campaign by the Seahawks wideout. I know that doesn't sound great, but their offense was pretty bad, and there was issues here. His success rate versus man coverage and his success rate versus zone are easily the worst marks of his career. And yes, I know Metcalf dealt with injuries at the midpoint of the season, but he was charting this way in the sampled games of weeks 1 through 6 as well. So those things regressed as the season went on. His success rate versus zone is the more troubling result, though. Metcalf has really developed some bad habits that have rotted into his game the last 2 seasons. He drifts on routes, brings defenders back in between himself and the quarterback in zone coverage. He doesn't work with ferocity back to the ball on stop routes, and his breaks are too rounded. They've all contributed to what's not really a tenable zone success rate for a consistent high-volume wide receiver. He's still at his best when he's attacking press coverage. He's eager to engage with his hands and has has a varied set of jab moves paired with strong strides to unleash from press. You really see this show up when he gets to run slants against press. He's been one of my favorite slant route runners since he entered the league, and still absolutely has that club in his bag in this past year in 2024. He's also a tantalizing proposition on go routes. We should never lose wonder at the fact that he can outrun the whole defense at his frame, which is pretty crazy. And that's very much true, folks. You need to glide past the defense on those go routes because at this point, he's become unreliable in contested situations. People think him and Pickens are the same, and they're not. Pickens is great in contested situation. Anyone who paints Metcalf as a big physical wideout because of his size and muscled up frame is pretty much saying they don't really watch the games. His contested catch rate has been on the decline ever since his first 2 seasons in the league, and it cratered to 40% in 2022. And Matt says that is beyond poor. As you can see, though, there are big holes in his route tree. And a lot of that, what they're just kind of paraphrasing, is he does put a lot of blame on Ryan Grubbs, who was Seattle's offensive coordinator, who only lasted 1 year, on his route tree and on his offensive scheme, which was very, very college-oriented. I mean, he came from the University of Washington to Seattle, and frankly, it was a raging, unsuccessful outing for their offensive coordinator. So he's gone. So he kind of summarizes it in that DK Metcalf is coming off a down season by his standards and was usurped by a better player in Jackson Smith-Njigba, who is a very, very good player. There's no getting around either one of those facts. Now, you can justify the Seahawks' decision to cash in their chips and pass on paying that contract. At the same time, he is still an excellent starting X receiver in the NFL. And that's both a valuable player and one that's really difficult to find. I should have mentioned that earlier, folks. Like, finding pure X's like Pickens and Metcalf is really, really difficult. It's much easier to find slots or speed guys or whatever. I also like how he fits into the route tree he'll likely handle in the Steelers offense. I don't know if I would have been eager to hand him that contract, but the Steelers are paying for a known product and proven hard worker when they've had significant issues in that room the last 2 seasons. It feels like a cop-out, but I can see his tenure in Pittsburgh going either way when you consider both his reception, perception, historical data, and the messy profile from 2025. Now, I hope that wasn't too nerdy. I think it's a really, really good in-depth breakdown of how he wins, what he does well. Last year was a little concerning. I think some of it isn't age or his game is slipping. I think some of it was poor protection, not a great scheme, but he also kind of is what he is at this point. I mean, there's very strong strengths and pretty noticeable weaknesses that probably won't change much this deep into his career. So that's what I got. I hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully there's some more news this week, and we will see what's going on with the Steelers quarterback.